The laugh. Aliens laughed at human gear, until they realized it was just standard issue. Across the galaxy, humans were new to the big wars. Their weapons looked old. Their armor looked heavy. Their gear looked slow. Most aliens laughed, especially the Zarnethi, tall, thin, shiny-skinned aliens who loved speed and style. Their armor was smooth and light. Their rifles could shoot light across a mile. They believed they were the best warriors in the galaxy. And maybe they were, until they met humans. It started on a frozen moon called Velter 7. The Zarnethi had a small base there, guarding a rare energy crystal. One day, they sent a distress signal. Unknown creatures were attacking the base, strong, fast, and immune to energy blasts. The Zarnethi needed help. The humans answered. When the human ship landed, the Zarnethi commander, Virex, walked out to greet them. He was surrounded by soldiers in perfect silver armor. They stood tall and proud. Then the humans came out. There were only 5 of them. Their armor looked bulky, scratched, and painted with strange symbols. Their boots left deep marks in the snow. One carried a backpack bigger than his own body. Another held a rifle that looked like something from an old museum. Virex looked at his second-in-command and laughed. These are the humans. Are they here to fight or fix fights? The other Zarnethi laughed too. Even some of the younger soldiers recorded videos to share later. But the humans didn't react. They just stood there, calm, silent, watching the base. One of them, a woman with short red hair, finally spoke. Which direction did they come from? Virex smirked. We don't need help anymore. We just wanted to see what Earth would send. It seems disappointing. The red-haired woman nodded. Noted. We'll gear up anyway. They walked to the back of their ship and opened their gear cases. The aliens leaned in, curious. What strange toys would the humans bring out now? One human pulled out a small black box and placed it on the ground. It opened and unfolded into a full defense turret. Another took out a suit that looked torn, but when he pressed a button, it sealed itself tight, glowing faintly in the dark. Virex frowned. That can't be real tech. That looks like junk. Just then, the base alarm screamed. Something had breached the perimeter. The creatures were back. Zarnethi soldiers rushed to their stations. Some panicked. Their energy shields were still recharging. Their scanners weren't working. Nothing showed on radar. The humans didn't wait. The red-haired woman snapped down her helmet and said one word. Move. The 5 of them ran straight into the storm, vanishing into the thick snow. Virex shouted after them. They'll freeze out there. Even we don't patrol during blizzards. But the humans didn't stop. Their suits lit up just enough to keep them together in the dark. Their helmets sealed tight against the wind. And their boots didn't slip at all. They climbed rocks, crossed ice, and left no trail. Inside the command room, the Zarnethi watched the screen in silence. One camera, barely working, showed a shadow of the creatures approaching. They were big, with 4 arms and thick hides. Zarnethi weapons had failed to stop them. Then something amazing happened. The humans attacked. One dropped a flare. The light didn't scare the creatures, but the sound did. It made them pause. Another human aimed that strange, old-looking rifle and fired. A single shot. Clean. The creature dropped. The other humans moved like a team of hunters. Fast, focused, brutal. In 5 minutes, the fight was over. The creatures were down. The snow was red, and the humans were walking back, calm, silent, not even breathing hard. When they entered the base, the aliens just stared. Virex stepped forward. What gear is that? The red-haired woman removed her helmet. Her face was cold but steady. Standard issue, she said simply. Nothing special. One of the Zarnethi engineers whispered. But it worked. In a storm, against monsters, with no scanners. Another added, "Our weapons jammed. Yours didn't." The humans began to check their gear, reloading calmly. One of them offered a small metal cup of hot liquid to a young alien soldier, who took it with shaking hands. Virex looked at them, confused. "How did you survive out there?" The woman gave a small smile. "We don't build for looks. We build to last." For the first time, the Zarnethi didn't laugh. They watched in silence as the humans prepared for the next attack. Heavy, slow, strange-looking, but somehow stronger, smarter, and ready for anything. And that was just the beginning. The first shock. They laughed at the gear. Then they saw what it could really do. The storm on Velter 7 did not end. It got worse. Winds screamed like angry ghosts, and thick clouds covered the sky. The temperature dropped below freezing, and strange red lightning danced across the horizon. The Zarnethi base had gone into full lockdown. Energy shields flickered, struggling to hold against the storm. Inside the base, the mood was tense. Soldiers whispered. Some still couldn't believe what they had seen outside. Others refused to speak at all. The human squad, however, was calm. They sat in one corner of the room, checking their weapons and gear again. Quiet, focused. Their armor was covered in ice and blood, but they didn't seem to care. Zarnethi Commander Virex walked in slowly, watching them. His sleek silver armor looked clean and elegant next to the human's dented metal and thick padding. Yet, deep down, he no longer felt superior. He cleared his throat. "You handled those beasts well. Impressive. For standard gear." One human, tall, dark-skinned, with a scar running down his cheek, looked up. "You haven't seen impressive yet." Before Virex could ask what he meant, a loud alarm began to ring. Not an attack warning. Something worse. System failure. Radiation breach. DTTT. Virex froze. Impossible. That can't happen. The core is. The red-haired woman, who had led the human squad earlier, stood up. "Where's your power source?" "In the main chamber, below the base." "Why?" She nodded to her team. "Let's go." Virex blinked. "You can't. The radiation. Our suits can't handle that much exposure. You'll die in minutes." The scar-faced human gave a small smile. "Your suits can't. Ours, standard issue." Before anyone could argue, the humans sealed their helmets and marched toward the lower level. The main power core chamber was a mess. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flew from the walls. One of the creatures must have damaged the coolant pipes. Now the core was overheating and leaking radiation. 2 Zarnethi engineers had already collapsed near the entrance. No one could reach them. But the humans did. Their suits beeped warnings, but they kept going. Inside the chamber, they moved with speed and precision. One took out a thick metal tool from his belt, something the Zarnethi thought was a weapon, and began sealing the leak. Another lifted one of the unconscious engineers and carried him out like he weighed nothing. Virex and the others watched through the glass window above the chamber, stunned. "How are they not collapsing?" One officer whispered. "Our scanners say radiation is at fatal levels." Virex stared at the humans, but they're still moving. Down below, the red-haired woman stood over the control panel. The screen was flickering. She tapped a few keys, pulled out a strange-looking plug from her armor, and connected it to the panel. A soft hum filled the room, and then the screen lit up, stable again. The core began to cool. A voice came through the speakers. The woman spoke calmly. "Radiation contained. Cooling system reset. Base secure." When the humans came back up, their armor hissed slightly as it released internal pressure. Smoke rose from their suits, but they looked unharmed. Virex walked up to them, almost afraid to speak. You walked into a death zone. Our best tech couldn't survive that." The red-haired woman removed her helmet. Her skin was sweaty, but her eyes were clear. "Our suits are built for space, war, and worse. Yours look nice, but ours keep us alive. Another human, a shorter man with a wide grin, added, and they're waterproof. He reached into his belt, pulled out a small container, and began eating something that looked like a meat bar. The Zarnethi stared in shock. "Why aren't you resting?" Virex asked. The man shrugged. "This is resting." The scar-faced soldier leaned against the wall, polishing his scratched armor. "You all keep building gear that looks good on posters. We build gear that works when things go wrong." Virex couldn't argue anymore. He had watched alien armor fail. He had watched human suits walk through fire, ice, and radiation without stopping. He had watched Zarnethi tech shut down, while human tools stayed online. And all of it was just standard issue. Later that night, the storm outside finally began to fade. The clouds opened just enough to show the stars again. Inside the base, the mood had changed. The Zarnethi soldiers no longer laughed at the humans. They watched them carefully, studying every move. Some even started copying the way they packed their gear. One young Zarnethi cadet walked up to the red-haired woman. "Your armor. Can I try it? Just to see." She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, just don't complain about the weight." He stepped into it and almost fell over. "It's so heavy." "That's because it's real protection," she said, "not a fashion suit." The room chuckled, not in mockery this time, but in respect. In the command room, Virex sat alone, staring at a report on his screen. The words glowed quietly. "Human squad saved base. Recovered energy crystal. No casualties. Gear status. Fully functional." He leaned back, thinking. The galaxy had laughed at humans for too long. But maybe they had been laughing at the wrong things. The weapon test. They thought human guns were slow and ugly until they saw them in action. The snow had stopped falling on Velter 7. The storm was over, but the silence it left behind was even heavier. Inside the alien base, repairs were underway. Zarnethi workers fixed broken walls, melted wires, and shattered lights. But something else was happening too, something quiet, but deep. The Zarnethi soldiers were watching the humans more closely now, not with jokes or laughter, but with curiosity. Some even tried to walk like them. Others copied how they packed their belts, tightened their gloves, or adjusted their helmets. Still, there was one thing the aliens couldn't understand: the weapons. Zarnethi rifles were sleek and beautiful. They hummed softly when powered. When fired, they shot pure plasma beams, hot and fast. Their pistols were shiny chrome, light as air, and came with built-in aim assist. The human weapons were ugly. That's how the aliens saw them. The rifles were long and bulky, with scratches and strange symbols carved into them. The pistols looked heavy and simple, made of black steel and thick parts. Some of the guns even had tape wrapped around the handles. "They look like museum pieces," one alien whispered. Another replied, "I've seen farm tools with more style." But that changed the next morning. A new threat appeared, not the creatures from before, but a scouting ship from a known pirate group, the Oryx Claw. They were brutal scavengers who attacked weak bases, stealing tech and selling survivors. Virex called the human squad immediately. "They're here for the crystal," he said. "If they land, they'll wipe us out." The red-haired human, Commander Riley, nodded. "Let them land." Virex blinked. "What?" She gave a calm smile. "We've been wanting to test weapons in the field." The Oryx ship landed fast, like a claw striking the snow. A ramp opened, and a dozen armored figures ran out. Their armor was sharp, colorful, and packed with gear. They had energy blades, sound grenades, and the latest phase rifles. Zarnethi soldiers prepared their plasma rifles. They lined up behind shield walls. The humans? They stood behind a snow mound, crouched low, whispering quietly into their radios. Then Commander Riley gave a hand signal. The fight began. The pirates fired first. Their rifles lit up the battlefield with purple streaks of energy. Snow exploded. The air crackled. Zarnathi shields struggled to hold. Then came the human response. One single shot. It came from Sergeant Hale, the scar-faced human with the old rifle. His weapon made a loud crack, like thunder. A pirate dropped. One shot. One kill. The pirates paused. Another shot. Another pirate down. The third human opened fire with a strange box-shaped gun. It roared like a wild animal. Bullets sprayed in short bursts, but every shot found a target. Commander Riley's team moved like ghosts. They didn't shoot constantly. They waited. They aimed. Every shot mattered. The pirates panicked. Their high-tech gear jammed in the cold. One of them tried to reload a smart rifle, but the system froze. Meanwhile, the humans reloaded in seconds. No voice commands, no blinking lights, just metal, powder, and purpose. From the command tower, Virex and his team watched in silence. "They're not using scanners," one officer whispered. "They're just seeing them." Another added, "and hitting them every time." Virex had never seen anything like it. His best marksman needed a scope and digital target lock. The humans, they just used their eyes. Commander Riley fired her pistol 3 times. Left, right, center. 3 enemies fell. Her pistol didn't glow. It didn't buzz. It just worked. 10 minutes later, the battlefield was quiet. The last pirate ship tried to lift off, but Hale had already placed a tracker explosive on its hull. As the ship rose, it exploded midair, lighting the sky with orange flames. Victory. Not a single human was injured. Later that evening, the Zarnathi soldiers gathered around the human weapons. Carefully, respectfully. One young alien asked, "Where's the cooling system?" Riley smiled. "We don't need one." Another pointed to the rifle. "What's this part for?" "Bayonet mount," said Hale. "In case you run out of bullets." The aliens were stunned. "You fight with knives too?" "If we have to," he replied simply. That night, Zarnathi engineers asked to scan the weapons. They were shocked at what they found. No auto-targeting, no heat sensors, no tracking chips, just heavy steel, old-fashioned mechanics, and deadly precision. "These guns," one alien said, "are built like tanks." Commander Riley laughed. "They're built to fire when soaked, dropped, frozen, or kicked. They don't jam. They don't ask questions. They just fire." Virex stood at the edge of the room, thinking deeply. He had always believed Zarnathi tech was superior, faster, smarter, more beautiful. But now he saw the truth. The humans didn't need their gear to look good. They needed it to work, always, no matter what. And it did. Every time. Before the humans went to rest, Virex stopped Riley. "Your guns, they look old, but they win fights. Why doesn't your army upgrade to plasma or phase tech?" She paused for a second, then looked him straight in the eye. "Because if you need fancy tech to win, you're not ready for real war." The next morning, some Zarnathi soldiers asked to train with human weapons. Not just to hold them, to shoot them, to learn. And for the first time, the humans said yes. Survival game. The base lost power. The aliens froze. The humans didn't even flinch. A quiet fell over Velter 7. The pirate attack was over. The strange creatures hadn't returned. For the first time in days, the Zarnathi soldiers thought things might be calm. But calm is dangerous when you're not ready for what comes next. It began in the middle of the night. Without warning, the lights went out. Every screen, scanner, and shield shut down. The soft hum of the power core vanished. The heaters stopped working. In seconds, the base was silent and cold. Total blackout. Zarnathi officers woke up in panic. They shouted into radios. Nothing. Their visors glitched. Their room doors were stuck shut. Some soldiers were locked in place by auto-security. Others slipped on frozen floors as frost crept in. Commander Virex tried to activate emergency mode, but even the backup battery was dead. "How can this happen?" one officer yelled. "EMP pulse." Another guessed. "Sabotage." Virex growled. "Get engineering online now." But there was no engineering. No tech. No answer. Then came a low, steady knock. A door creaked open, and in walked a figure lit only by a small orange flame. It was a human, Sergeant Hale, carrying a metal box and a lantern made from something that looked like melted scrap and wires. "What's going on?" Virex asked. Hale shrugged. "Your systems are out." "Yes, we know," Virex snapped. "Everything's failed." "Then you've got a bigger problem," Hale said calmly, setting the box down. "This moon gets cold fast." Within an hour, the Zarnethi base dropped below freezing. Frost covered every surface. Pipes cracked. Doors jammed. The Zarnethi had never trained for this. But the humans, they were already prepared. Commander Riley moved fast. She and her team had switched to insulated coats layered over their armor. They pulled out gear that looked like camping supplies: flint sticks, foldable tents, water purifiers, and strange black tablets they dropped into canisters to boil water. In one corner of the base, they started a fire. A real fire, inside a metal drum, with real wood. Zarnethi soldiers stood around it, eyes wide. "Is that legal?" one asked. "Legal." Riley smiled. "It's warm." While the aliens were frozen in confusion, the humans got to work. Hale melted ice and filtered it into clean water. A medic named Ortiz boiled soup over the fire using a steel pot. Two others sharpened knives using stone blocks, calmly talking about tactics and weather. By morning, the human corner looked like a military survival camp. Small, warm, and fully running without a single piece of active technology. Virex and his officers stood in the cold hallway, trying to reboot a control panel. Nothing worked. Their tech needed power. Their minds needed systems. Without screens, they were lost. Virex turned to Riley. "How are you doing all this without power?" She poured a hot drink and handed it to him. "Where we're from," she said, "we don't wait for help. We are the help." Later that day, Riley took a group of Zarnethi cadets outside the base. It was -40 degrees, and the wind cut like knives. But the humans moved through it like a morning hike. They showed the cadets how to use snow for shelter, build windbreaks with rock and cloth, start fire without matches, signal allies with mirrors and colored smoke. One young Zarnethi said, "Why do you even train for this?" Hale grinned. "Because things go wrong. They always go wrong." Back at the base, a Zarnethi engineer finally figured out what had happened. The pirates left behind a delayed virus. It shut down all our systems from the inside. Virex nodded slowly. "And we had no manual backup." The engineer added, "The humans, they didn't need any." That night, the humans gave out extra gear, not because they had to, because they saw who was struggling. Wool gloves, fire sticks, thick blankets, even a few steel cups for hot soup. The Zarnethi were too proud to ask. The humans gave anyway. Riley sat beside the fire as the second night fell. Virex sat next to her, hands wrapped around a warm cup. "I used to think survival was about tech," he said. "Now I see. It's about mindset." Riley nodded. "Tech breaks. Humans don't, if we're trained right." Virex looked at her, eyes narrowed. "Your gear, your skills, your preparation. Is it all standard?" She didn't smile this time. She just said, "Yes." The next morning, the lights flickered back on. The systems were repaired. The heat returned. Screens lit up. The base came alive again. But something had changed. The Zarnethi didn't rush to their tech like before. They looked at it with new eyes, realizing how useless it had been in the worst moment. And the humans. They packed up their fire, cleaned the space, and returned every tool to its box like nothing had happened. Riley gave one last look around and said, "Next time, don't rely on comfort. Rely on training." That day, Commander Virex sent a message to his superiors. Request immediate review of all survival protocols. Recommend integration of human field methods. They endured the cold, the dark, and fear itself with basic gear. We didn't. The ambush. The enemy jammed every system. The aliens panicked. The humans got to work. It had been 3 quiet days since the power came back on. The Zarnathi base on Velter 7 was finally stable again. Repairs were nearly complete. Heat and light flowed through the walls like blood through veins. Every screen glowed. Every scanner pulsed. Every soldier walked with pride again. The humans, meanwhile, returned to their routines. Cleaning weapons by hand. Practicing silent drills in the snow. Sharpening blades with rocks. Commander Virex watched them from a distance. He didn't laugh anymore. He didn't even smile. He was learning. And then, just when everyone thought peace had returned, it happened. 2:17 a.m. Galactic Time. A quiet hum passed through the walls. Most didn't notice it. Just a small vibration in the air, a flicker on the screen, a strange buzz in the ears. Then the lights cut out. Again. But this time, it wasn't just a power outage. Every system crashed at once. Not just lights. Not just heat. Everything. Comms. Dead. Radar. Gone. Door locks. Frozen. Defense turrets. Offline. Even the smart visors worn by elite Zarnathi units went dark, blinking once, then nothing. Chaos erupted. EMP. Someone shouted. "No," Virex said, his voice tight. "Too clean. This is targeted. This is a system kill." Screams echoed down the halls. Sparks flew from overloaded panels. Auto turrets began to rotate wildly, then shut down completely. The Zarnathi scrambled. They had no way to see outside. No way to call for help. No working weapons. Most of their energy-based rifles had safety locks that required system verification. Without power, they were useless. Virex barked orders, but no one could hear him through the crashing sound of panic. And then, from deep in the base, came the first explosion. They were under attack. The enemy had arrived silently. Dark shapes slipped through the snow. No ships, no lights, just movement in the shadows. These weren't pirates or animals. These were trained soldiers, stealth commandos from a rival empire known as the Call Syndicate, experts in infiltration, masters of sabotage. They had used a tech pulse to shut down the base before striking. The Zarnathi had no warning, but someone was ready. Deep in the mess hall, a fire flickered to life. Sergeant Hale stood over it, strapping on his vest and checking a bolt-action rifle, one of the oldest models in human service. Commander Riley slid a knife into her boot, then loaded her sidearm without even looking. No batteries, no lights, no screens, just steel and purpose. She gave the order. Her voice was quiet, but everyone in the human squad moved instantly. 5 humans. No support, no backup. But they didn't need any. Virex found them minutes later. He was covered in dust, blood on his cheek, and fear in his eyes. "They're inside," he said, panting. "Call strike unit. At least 20. They jammed everything." Riley didn't panic. She just asked, "Where?" "They breached from the west tunnel. They've already taken 2 corridors. Any survivors?" "Some. Scattered. Confused. They can't see, can't fight. Their weapons are locked." Hale grunted. "Let's fix that." The humans split into 2 teams. Hale took 2 soldiers and went to the lower levels. Riley and 1 other soldier headed toward the main corridor, where the Call were cutting through security doors. What followed was not a battle. It was a hunt. The call came in with energy blades and stun grenades, but those grenades didn't affect humans who trained in live combat zones. They had no systems to disable, no reliance on smart gear. The call wore silent boots. Humans walked barefoot across broken metal to stay quiet. The call used heat sensors. The humans used smell and instinct. In one hallway, 2 call soldiers stepped over a frozen pipe. Then one dropped, a knife suddenly in his neck. Riley stood over the body, silent, and moved on. In the lower vents, Hale and his team crawled through maintenance shafts. When the call passed below them, they dropped down like wolves. 1 shot, 2 stabs, gone. By the time Virex's team restored partial power, half the call unit was already down. And they still had no idea what was killing them. At one point, call reinforcements tried to scan for life signs. Nothing. The humans had already switched to cold packs to hide their body heat. They fought like ghosts. And every tool they used, their knives, rifles, traps, even fire-starting gel, was basic, rugged, and brutally effective. The turning point came at the command hallway. 4 call soldiers breached the main door. Inside was Riley, alone, waiting in the dark. They laughed. One raised his blade. Then a flash. Bang. Bang. Click. Bang. 3 fell. The 4th ran, only to find Hale waiting at the corner. "Wrong tunnel," Hale said, then finished it with 1 silent strike. By sunrise, it was over. Virex stood in the snow outside the base, staring at the bodies being carried out. No call survived. No human was injured. Later that morning, power was fully restored. Zarnathi engineers scanned the logs. The call virus had shut down all advanced tech, anything connected, anything smart. But the human weapons, untouched. Their gear had no digital controls, no network ports, no wireless tools. You couldn't hack what wasn't connected. In the briefing room, Riley stood in front of Virex and his officers. "This is why we still train with basics," she said, "not because it's all we have, but because it works, even when nothing else does." One Zarnathi captain raised a hand. "But your gear, it doesn't even look advanced." "It's not," Riley said. "It's reliable." Virex sat back in his chair thinking hard. His entire army could be shut down with 1 pulse. But the humans, they were the pulse. That afternoon, several Zarnathi officers requested combat training from the human squad. Knife work, rifle loading, silent movement, old-school tactics. And Riley, she agreed. Not because she wanted to show off, because she knew one day they'd need it. The realization, they asked where the humans got this gear. The answer changed everything. The base on Velter 7 was no longer just a cold outpost on a forgotten moon. It had become something else. A lesson. Not just for the Zarnathi, but for every alien who had ever laughed at human gear. Days had passed since the call ambush. The base was secure. The bodies were gone. The systems were back online. But something strange was happening. Zarnathi officers no longer walked with their usual pride. They walked slower now, quieter, thinking. Their armor no longer felt perfect. Their weapons didn't feel powerful anymore. Not after what they'd seen. They had watched high-tech systems shut down with a whisper. And they had watched humans fight with nothing but steel and instinct. Commander Virex sat in his war room, staring at the cracked screen in front of him. His polished gloves tapped the table, over and over. He was waiting. Across from him sat Commander Riley, the human who had led the squad through every disaster. Her armor was dusty. Her boots were scuffed. There was a patch of dried blood on her sleeve. But she looked completely at ease. Finally, Virex leaned forward and asked the question that had been building in his mind since the moment the first flare was lit. "Where did you get this gear?" Riley raised an eyebrow. "This." "Yes. Your suits. Your weapons. Your kits. Nothing breaks. Nothing shuts down. It works in storms, in fire, in space, even in silence. She looked at her rifle, lying across her lap. The matte black paint was chipped. The metal was scratched from years of use. But it still worked. Perfectly. She gave a simple answer. Standard issue. Virex blinked. Standard. Yeah, Riley said. Every soldier on Earth carries something like this. It's what we're given when we leave boot camp. But it survived radiation. It worked without energy. It's because we need it to. Riley interrupted. We don't make weapons to show off. We make them to survive. Virex leaned back slowly, stunned. So, this isn't special gear. Riley gave a soft laugh. Commander, this isn't even top tier. This is what we give to rookies. The room went silent. A single Zarnathi technician in the corner dropped his stylus. You mean, there's more, he whispered. Oh, much more, Riley replied. But most of it never leaves Earth. You don't need top-tier gear to win a fight. You need gear that works when the sky falls. Word spread fast through the base. Standard issue. That phrase echoed down every hallway, repeated in awe, disbelief, and even a little fear. Aliens who once mocked human armor now leaned in to touch it, to study it, to understand it. They found things they never expected. Layers designed to trap body heat, even in deep space. Manual locks instead of digital ones. Immune to hacking. Spare compartments hidden in boots, gloves, and even helmet linings. Weapons with zero digital parts. No AI. No targeting chips, just raw power. One Zarnathi engineer said it best. These aren't tools. They're survival systems. The realization hit harder when the Zarnathi Council ship arrived. It came with bright lights, gold-plated hulls, and advisors dressed in fine robes. They were here to inspect the base and assist with rebuilding. Instead, they found their soldiers asking humans how to start fires without plasma lighters. One advisor stepped forward and sneered at a human knife. Primitive. Sergeant Hale looked up, chewing on a ration bar. This primitive saved 6 of your officers. Want a demonstration? The advisor stepped back. Later, during a private session, the council members met with Riley. They had charts, reports, and dozens of questions. But Riley just sat there, calm and quiet, letting them talk. Finally, one of the older council members asked the question carefully. Why does Earth still send troops with this basic gear? Riley leaned forward, locking eyes with every person at the table. Because Earth knows one thing you all forgot. Fancy doesn't mean ready. She continued, her voice calm but steady. You rely on systems. We rely on ourselves. You fight with light. We fight with steel. You train for control. We train for chaos. That's why we win. The room fell silent. And one by one, the council members stopped writing notes. They just listened. The next day, something even stranger happened. A Zarnathi elite guard, one of the highest-ranking soldiers on the moon, walked up to Riley. He removed his helmet, slowly, and held out his gleaming rifle. I want to trade, he said. Riley blinked. Trade what? Your rifle, your armor, your knife, all of it. You want this old thing? She asked. I want something that works, he said. Something real. By sunset, 5 Zarnathi had requested human gear, not for show, not for study, for real training. They wanted to walk in heavy boots, feel the weight of a steel knife, practice in armor that didn't talk or shine or beep. They wanted to learn how to survive, not just how to fight. Commander Virex watched it all unfold from the tower above. He had seen it now with his own eyes. The laughter was gone. The pride was fading. In its place was something better. Respect. Not for style, not for power, but for durability, for discipline, and for the human will to fight when everything else breaks. That evening, he stood beside Riley one last time before her team prepared to leave. I used to think humans were behind, he said. She gave a small smile. We were, a long time ago. But now, I think we're the ones trying to catch up. You will, she said, but not with upgrades, with mindset. Virex nodded slowly. Tell me the truth. Is there more coming? More like you? She turned to face the stars. Oh yes, she said. This is just the starter pack, the change. They once laughed at human gear. Now the galaxy is copying it. 1 month had passed since the call ambush on Velter 7. The snow still fell. The stars still watched. But everything else had changed. Across the galaxy, whispers turned into questions. Then questions turned into orders. And those orders all pointed to one thing. Find out how the humans did it. It started with a report. Simple. 1 page. Written by Commander Virex himself. Human standard gear outperformed our most advanced systems in every environment. Fire, cold, EMP, close combat, survival. Recommend immediate review of military doctrine. The Zarnethi High Council didn't know how to respond. This was Earth, the backwater species. The newcomers, the ones with steel and cloth and loud rifles. But now, they were being called the future. Other empires noticed too. The Velari Confederation, proud of their floating drones and nanoweapons, watched the Velter 7 footage in silence. In one video, a human soldier set a trap using wire, ice, and gravity. It brought down an elite call soldier in seconds. The Velari Council paused the video. One of them whispered, "That wasn't tech." "No," another replied. "That was training." Soon after, Earth started receiving requests, thousands of them. Send instructors. Send samples of your gear. Send manuals. Send more humans. But Earth didn't respond right away. They were busy, training new recruits. On the space station Argon 3, located near the edge of neutral space, something remarkable happened. A Zarnethi training center was converted into a human-style combat zone. No tech, no power armor. Just rocks, mud, cold steel, and loud weapons. And in the center stood a young human drill sergeant, shouting over the wind. You don't need a scanner to see a target. Use your eyes. Use your ears. Use your brain. Alien soldiers crawled through trenches. They slipped. They sweated. They bled. But none of them quit. Because now they understood. If you wanted to survive a real war, you had to train like a human. One Zarnethi cadet wrote home to his family. We used to fear darkness. Now we train in it. We used to worship light. Now we sharpen blades in the mud. We used to laugh at human gear. Now I pray for boots like theirs. Even alien engineers, once obsessed with glowing armor and voice-activated weapons, began redesigning their tools. They stopped using glass. They started using metal. They stopped building for display. They started building for durability. One popular design came with a slogan stamped on the side. Inspired by Earth, built to survive. Meanwhile, Earth soldiers began taking on new roles. Not just fighters, teachers. One human squad was sent to a desert planet where elite Velari troops had failed for years. They arrived with no drones, no high-tech sensors, just knives, maps, and canteens. They cleared the region in 3 days. The locals started calling them sand ghosts. In another system, a human named Private Lee was dropped with 3 days' worth of gear and no support. He built a trap network from rocks and rope. He turned a cave into a fortress. He held off 12 attackers alone. When the backup team arrived, they found him sipping coffee beside a homemade fire pit. His report read, "Gear held up. Nothing special. Just standard." Back on Earth, military command watched the galaxy's reaction with quiet amusement. General Rhodes, head of Earth's Interstellar Defense Force, looked over a list of requests. Training offers, tactical exchanges, purchase orders for simple gear. He leaned back in his chair and said, "They finally get it. We don't fight with tech. We fight with mindset." Soon, it wasn't just soldiers changing. Entire cultures began to shift. Alien youth wore replicas of human combat boots. Music videos featured singers wearing dented body armor. Movies showed human-style soldiers as the heroes, rugged, dirty, unstoppable. One popular phrase spread across social feeds in 100 languages. If it's not scratched, it's not tested. But not everyone was happy. The Call Syndicate, still nursing its wounds from Velter 7, issued warnings. Do not follow Earth's path. It is crude. It is dangerous. It is beneath true warriors. But even their own recruits began asking for simpler gear. Some secretly carried human-style knives into missions. The fear had changed sides. In the quiet of deep space, somewhere between stars, a lone Zarnathi warship ran into a pirate ambush. The captain gave the order to prepare shields. Nothing happened. Systems jammed. The same trick as before. For a moment, it felt like history repeating. Until a voice came through the comms. Human. Calm. Confident. Don't worry. We packed the good stuff. Then came the roar of fire. Steel against energy. And this time, the pirates were the ones running. Back on Velter 7, the snow still fell. But something new had been built outside the base. A statue. Not tall. Not shiny. It showed a simple human soldier standing in the snow, rifle slung over one shoulder, hand resting on a Zarnathi soldier's shoulder. The plaque read, "When the lights went out, they didn't panic. When the gear failed, they didn't stop. When death came to our door, they opened it and walked out." To Earth, this was normal. To us, it was the beginning. Commander Virex visited that statue every week. Not as a leader, but as a student. Because on Velter 7, he learned the greatest truth of war. It's not about who has the best gear. It's about who keeps going when the gear breaks. In the end, Earth didn't conquer the galaxy with fleets or lasers. It didn't need golden armor or glowing swords. All it needed was a soldier with dirty boots, scratched gear, and the will to walk through fire. Standard issue, but unforgettable.